Hello everyone, in this video lecture we're going to talk about overloading in Python programming, and there are two concepts, overloading and overriding. First, let's see what is the difference between these two concepts, right? So we have overloading and then we also have overriding. Okay, so what is overloading? Well, overloading means you can have same name. Overloading means same name but different number of arguments, right? So it's like, let's say I want to create two functions. So this is my add function, and here I want to add two numbers, and this is my second function. Again, its name is add, but it is adding three numbers, because if I create this function, if I define this function and I try to send three arguments, I try to send three numbers to add, it will not work, right? So for that I'll have to create a different function. But can I have same name for the same function, because it is actually going to add, it will eventually add these three numbers, right? So yes, I can have function name, same function name, but it should have different number of arguments, or these arguments should have different data types. So it could be like I'm adding integers here and I'm adding float numbers here, right? So that way it will work. So this is called overloading. And when it comes to in this way, when you actually call the function, so let's say if I call function, say I call a function add 86869. So when this function is called, this one, it knows that control should go to this definition. Okay, this will not go to this definition. So in a way they are different. They are being differentiated by the way they are actually declared or defined, right? So this is called overloading. But in case of overriding, as you know, overriding means to you are actually overriding means you will have, let's say, first function defined here, and then when you define the second one, this function is actually overriding this one. So this will have some kind of definition, it will have some definition, and this is also having definition, but the moment you define this one, it kind of overrides this. It is little different concepts, and it is used in classes and object programs. So we'll discuss it when we talk about classes and objects. We've already talked about classes and objects, but we haven't talked about overriding. So we'll talk about that. We are going to focus on overloading in this video lecture. So when it comes to overloading, we are going to talk about this special syntax .args, and you don't actually have to use args, and I'll tell you why. First of all, let's try to create a program. So I'm going to create a program where I'm adding two numbers. So add function, and this is my first function, and then I will create another function with the same name, because we are trying to perform overloading here. So for overloading, I'll provide three arguments here, because this is what overloading is. And when I add these arguments, so now if I call first function, so let's say 7 8, it will give an error. I have already defined a function adding two numbers, but when I try to call it, it gives an error. What if I try to call second one? Second one requires 3 arguments. So if I call this one, it will give the output, right? So Python doesn't support overloading. You can only use the latest or the last method defined when methods have same name. So every time methods have same name, the latest one will be called. Okay, first one will not be called. So this is what happens in Python programming, and we can still have overloading in Python programming, and for that you can use one name, right? So you don't have to define the function twice or thrice. You can use one name for the function and use it for multiple values and use these special syntax. Now actually what we are going to do here is you will define a function, right? And we want that it should take 2 arguments. It should also take 3 arguments. So what we're going to do is I'll take star args. So what it means is I can take multiple arguments, right? Now when I'm taking multiple arguments, it could be integers, because it's not like I told you, when we talk about overloading, it means that name of the function will be the same, but it can have arguments with different numbers or different data types, right? So in this case, since I'm going to define just one function, so add function, but it can take different arguments. Now these arguments could be of different data types. So I need to have another variable here, and I'm going to name it data type, right? Okay. Now what I actually want is that when I call this function add, I can pass 2 arguments, I can pass 3 arguments, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however I want. But I also need to tell the type of data that I'm passing. Okay, so the very first step would be to check the data type. So whether I'm passing integer or I'm passing float value or string value, and then I can define the function that I want to perform. So if I'm passing integer, you should know what you're doing here. If you are adding, you know how you can add, and if you're multiplying, you should know how you can multiply. So if I'm trying to add here, obviously I need to have a variable, right, with integer value, and then I can add it to all the arguments I am going to provide here. So I'm taking a variable, let's say C, and I'll initialize it with 0. It looks like O, but it is 0. Okay, so I am taking this variable and I will initialize it with 0. Now once I have it, I know that args, this variable, will have multiple arguments. Okay, so what I'll do is I will loop over all of its arguments. So for, I'll have to take a variable I in args, right? What do I want to do? I want to save my value in some variable C, and C already has a value 0, so I'm going to, because I want to add all the numbers. So let's say I have three numbers, 2, 3 and 4 that I'm passing. Okay, so first I will, when I say for I in args, now this is the value of args, so I in args first value will be 2, so I will add 2, that is I, in C. Now C is 0, I is 2, 2 plus 0 is 2. Now C becomes 2. So for the next argument 3, C equals to 3 plus 2, it becomes 5. Now value of C is 5. So for the third one, it becomes 4 plus 5. Okay, and at the end you can just print the value of C. and you're good to go. Now something I really want you to notice here is, if you Google also, you will see many of the websites using ARGS, right, and using data type. Now these are not mandatory to use, and I will give you an example here without using these. So I'm going to create a function here, and my first argument is going to be for data type. So I'm taking A, okay, because in Python we don't specify data type of variable, right? It's not like we have to declare it first and then we initialize it. The moment we initialize it, it knows the type of the data, right? So I'm just going to write A, and when I say star B, it definitely means I'm going to give some values here, and we still don't know what A is, right? So I would say if A equals to int, now it knows that A will catch the value of some data type, right? So it is expecting integer or string or whatever. You can write as many statements as you want. If A equals to int, you can write statements here for that. If A equals to str, that is for string or float value or any other value. So accordingly that particular block will be executed, right? So now since I want to add these numbers, I am saying if A equals to int, what should happen? I'm again taking a variable C equals to 0, and then I want, now you can start from here or you can start from here also, because ultimately we first want to check whether A is integer or not, and if it is integer, then I just know that I need to loop over the elements of B, right? So if A is integer, I'll loop over the elements of B. This is how you can remember. Okay, I'll have to write it again because I used too many tabs. So A comma star B, if A equals to int, C equals to 0, for X in B, C equals to C plus X. Now I hope you know why I'm doing this here. And then, now I'm not writing print statement inside for loop, because if I do that, for every single addition that happens over the iterations, value will be printed. So it will go like 2 plus 3. So let's say I have three numbers, 2, 3, 4. It will be 2 plus 3, then it will print 5. And then for the next iteration, it will print 5 plus 4. I mean 9, the last, the actual result. So I don't want that to happen. So I will print value of C outside for loop. Okay. And now I'm going to call this function. Now if I call it, let's say 98, it will not give any value, right? Because it is expecting something. So int, and let's say 9817, and for 3 values, okay, this is how overloading works in Python programming. I hope this lecture was useful, and if you still have any doubt, you can always ask in the comment sections below. I will see you next Monday with another Python programming video. Till then, take care.